Hello everyone, this is part 1 of What If Naruto Got His Wish. This story is made by Neo-Lifethane, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Orochimaru grinned as his eyes beheld the massive stone door before him. Old, demonic-looking seals were carved into it. In their time, those seals had represented an impassable barrier to all but the most knowledgeable of souls, and had kept this tomb tightly locked beneath the earth for generations. Apparently, the man, or demon, that had sealed it intended for it to be found only after several eons had passed, if at all. And it seemed that for some time now, his wishes had been granted. However, the stone upon which the carvings were made was not entirely proof against time, and erosion had sapped the carvings of much of their coherency. Without their original perfection, their forbidding power had begun to fade away. The door was no longer the impenetrable locked gate that it had been made to be. In those old, frayed seals that used to project insurmountable solidity, Orochimaru saw a weakness, and with it, an opportunity. The snake Sannin knew that mortals did not lock up and hide away things in such a manner that was small, trivial, or worthless. Only the worst criminals, the most sacred treasures, and the most terrible powers imaginable received such sheltering, solid tombs. The nature of the demonic seals that locked it also said much, for only two kinds of Ani knew how to write them, demons, and those whose job or hobby it was to seal demons. Whatever was kept in this old tomb, Orochimaru knew, had to be something either immensely precious or immensely powerful, and Orochimaru was not one to refuse a chance to obtain power. His grin remained plastered to his pale, menacing face as he moved forward to shatter the seals. They did not hold for long against the legendary snake Sannin, and within moments, the door to the tomb was open, its contents exposed for Orochimaru to behold and master. He braced himself against possible attack. He still did not know whether or not the seals were the tomb's only defense, or if the contents themselves were in any way dangerous. When no attack came, however, Orochimaru's grin widened, and he stepped into the cold, dark, stone-walled chamber, eager for a power he could seize. For a long time, the blind man lay in cold and darkness. Then, rather suddenly, the door to his prison was heaved open. Moments later, the ice which had bound his form for a time that he failed to measure was shattered, and he felt his body crash to the stone floor amid melting shards. For several minutes, the man with no eyes failed to move, but the faint warmth from the torches carried by the men standing in the tomb slowly seeped into the room and thawed his stiff muscles. After a silence that lasted half of an eternity, he was able to rise to his feet. So, drawled a voice from the door, "What is it that I've unearthed here, in this demon's sealed tomb?" The blind one flinched. He could tell after the first word that the owner of this voice was not at all a pleasant person. As it continued its questioning, he almost felt the cold of his imprisonment return to him, despite the heat of the torches. "Strange," it went on, "it doesn't seem to be anything worth my time. Are you a demon? A Jinchuriki, perhaps? The creator of a jutsu to defy the ravages of time? Or are you simply an eyeless, frozen human who has yet to surrender to death?" The prisoner tried to find his voice to respond, but to no avail. His larynx was a solid block of frozen human tissue. All he could produce was a frosty breath of air, at which the questioning voice took on a disinterested tone. "Well, that is quite the shame," it said. "I had hoped for something that I might make great use of. Unfortunately, it seems as though all of my efforts to dig you out have yielded me nothing of true value." The owner of the voice approached the blind man, leaning down until he was practically breathing in the blind man's ear. The blind one shuddered involuntarily, more from fearful discomfort rather than the cold. Some part of his newly thawed brain was telling him that his frailty resulting from being frozen for countless years was about to earn him a very unpleasant welcome back to life party. "But, no matter. I am always in need of new test subjects, and you ought to do well. You know, I've always wondered if the human body can feel more pain when they aren't distracted by their vision." Although he had no eyes to see, the prisoner was certain that the owner of that malefic voice was smiling. Although pain had become the staple of the blind man's diet by this point, he still did not appreciate how much more difficult his escape was because of it. It was bad enough trying to scramble over rocks, climb trees, wade through rapids, and find food without being able to see. Add to that a massive headache, unstaunched bee loss, both internal and external, a complete lack of any sense of direction or location, horrific emaciation, and generally excruciating pain accompanying every movement, and he was in a state that was more than a little sad. Yet, he continued, because the alternative was to be recaptured and taken back to that hell, where pain that was several thousand times worse awaited him. While he had no idea where he was going, he was sure that it had to be better than what he had left behind. At least, that's what he hoped. Damn you, he gasped out, I swear, if the rest of the world is even a fraction of what that hell was, I will you sadistic beast. Blind or not. A 7-year-old boy sat in his favorite swing outside the ninja academy in Konohagakure, pondering, not for the first time, his abnormal existence. Normally on a bright, warm summer day like this, his after-class activities involved the pulling of pranks, eating clean through the Ichiraku ramen bar's storerooms, or working on learning new, sometimes perverted to annoy Iruka-sensei, variations of ninjutsu to impress Sakura-chan and show the world just how great he was. But this was not a normal day for the blonde ninja in training. This was one of those days when young Uzumaki Naruto spent his afternoon trying to convince himself that he was alive. He had to do this himself, because nobody else seemed to want to do it for him. Naruto had no parents to love him, care for him, and be proud of him. He had no friends to support him or pick him up when he went down. Hell, most people found it too much of an effort to even acknowledge him, and those that did treated him like a nuisance or a speck of dirt, rather than as a living, breathing thing. Answer, Uzumaki Naruto did his utmost to make people acknowledge him. Even if the attention he received from his troublemaking was negative, it still told him what he desperately needed to know: he existed. It was sad, but until he could graduate from the academy and show them a Naruto whose existence could not be denied by anyone, it was the only way he knew to make people look at him. It hurt him, knowing that the only eyes that he could turn his way were so cold and hateful. Some days, as on this one, Naruto just felt hopeless. And on those days, he sat here, on his swing, trying to find a reason to continue. He got up from his swing and began walking, until his feet found the edge of the forest, a place of solitude where he could let down his prankster mask without fear. Sometimes, he said to the summer air, I wish that someone would look at me without those eyes. His emotional reverie was interrupted by the crunching of the forest floor beneath heavy feet. Naruto searched frantically for the source of the noise. If someone was going to attack him out here with those cold eyes. However, the source of the noise was not an assailant. The man who faced Naruto now was the least threatening-looking man that Naruto had ever seen, because he didn't have those hateful eyes. In fact, he had no eyes at all, and he was in such a state of hurt that he couldn't possibly have been a threat to a 2-year-old, let alone the blonde Hokage-to-be. Naruto dropped the kunai in shock. The eyeless man's head turned towards him. He'd heard the knife hit the ground. Taking a step forward, he spoke with a pained, ragged voice. Ninja. Naruto fought through his surprise and responded, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I'm going to be Hokage one day. Ah. The stranger groaned, good, you can help me. Then, his energy expended, he collapsed to the forest floor. Oi, Ni-chan. Hang on. The young Naruto ran to the injured, blind stranger, a new determination in his blue eyes. This man had not yelled at him, had not assumed from his loud, boyish voice that he was not just some useless kid, had not scoffed at his ambition to become Hokage. He had immediately put his trust in him, Uzumaki Naruto, and asked for help. Nobody in Konohagakure had ever accepted help from him before. Don't worry, Ni-chan. I'll get you to the village. This person trusted Naruto willingly, where nobody else had. If he needed help, then Uzumaki Naruto would make sure that he got it. When he awoke, the blind man found himself in a clean hospital bed, swathed in several bandages on his arms, left leg, and abdomen. He felt dull aching sensations beneath the wraps, but otherwise his body was completely free of pain. Also, the emaciated feeling had completely vanished, and he was more than ready to believe that his lost bee had been miraculously replenished as well. This was a welcome discovery to him. Quite frankly, he'd expected not to wake up. I'm pleased that I did, though, he thought to himself, a small smile crossing his face. That young ninja must be pretty good if he managed to save my sorry behind. As soon as he moved his hands to feel out his surroundings, said young ninja piped up from a chair across the room. Ni-chan, you survived. Thanks to your intervention, yeah, I did. The blind man's smile broadened. Uzumaki Naruto, was it? You've got my gourd, boy. It must have been a pain dragging me here, ne. Nothing that a future Hokage couldn't handle. The eyeless one didn't know what a Hokage was, but the boy's energy was infectious, so he didn't question him. When he failed to respond immediately, Naruto asked his own question. So, Ni-chan, what got you so beat up? Was it enemy ninja? I have a name, you know, the man chuckled. It's Keisuke, not Ni-chan. As for what did that to me, I couldn't really tell if they were shinobi or not. When they found me, I'd been away from civilization a long time, and it was hard enough just trying to figure out where I was. But Keisuke Ni-san, couldn't you have figured it out from their headbands? Or their ninjutsu? Keisuke sighed at the kid's continued use of Ni-san, but declined to challenge it again, opting instead to just answer the question. I can't see anything, so I wouldn't be able to figure it out through an article of clothing, and just because they didn't use any jutsu doesn't mean that they weren't capable of it, especially since they probably wouldn't feel the need to use jutsu on a starved blind man anyway. Keisuke couldn't see the blonde's face fall in disappointment, but he could feel the kid's aura begin to show signs of frustration. Apparently, the young one had been anticipating some cool ninja story. He smiled again. Kids could be such great entertainment sometimes. Keisuke said, I'll tell you this, though, ninja or not, those guys sure were mean little bastards. Suddenly, a stern voice interrupted from the doorway. All right, you, she said, indicating Naruto, out. Bad enough that you dirtied one of our patients by convincing Hokage-sama to have us give him your filthy bee, but I won't have you teaching him how to muck up our village. Out. Keisuke sensed anger and a bit of defiance in the kid's aura, the latter of which was quickly suppressed. Yeah, Naruto said, I'm going, Keisuke Ni-chan, I hope you get out of there soon. This woman's a nightmare. With that, a scuffle began as young Naruto was chased out of the room. Keisuke could only laugh at that. However, he had not expected a hospital nurse to be so hostile to a kid. What could he have done to make her refer to his bee as filthy? He wondered. It can't be that bad, especially since the kid was nice enough to let me have some. Naruto-kun, I hope you survive. Judging the woman's actions, I think you may be right. That said, Keisuke relaxed into the bed, letting sleep hasten his recovery. Released from the hospital, Keisuke wandered the village, which, he had learned, was called Konoha, in search of replacements for his worn, ragged garments. This was an urgent need, as he could feel the stares that the villagers were giving him. He wondered briefly whether this was because of his empty eye sockets or because his clothing wasn't covering as much of him as it should have been. He assumed that it was the former, but would not have been surprised if the latter was true. These rags had survived some pretty lavish tea. Initially, he'd attempted to find a clothing store by heading towards the place where he sensed the most female auras, but this had yielded the rather unpleasant result of him walking into the women's baths. Apparently, morning hot baths were popular in Konoha. Keisuke had been the recipient of several punches, kicks, and bruises before one woman, upon attempting to gouge his eyes out, had discovered that he had no eyes to gouge and therefore could not have been sneaking into the women's bath to peep at girls. So now, a half-clothed, battered, and lost Keisuke was trying to come up with a new way to locate a clothing shop. His salvation turned out to be none other than Uzumaki Naruto. Oi, Keisuke Ni-chan. You lost. Keisuke felt himself smiling again. This kid's energy was infectious. Ni-chan, I still think that orange would have looked totally kick-ass on you. And I still think that wearing clothes that scream, hit me, isn't in my best interest. Having managed to avoid being clothed entirely in orange, Keisuke had no way of knowing what orange or any other color was. But he did know by word of mouth that it was one of the most annoyingly noticeable colors, and did not want to stand out by his loud young friend. Keisuke walked out of one store clad in tough black pants, thick-soled boots, a black t-shirt with a red spiral emblem, dark green fingerless gloves which sported metal plates, and a dark green vest, which he chose to leave unzipped. Dark sunglasses hid his eyeless sockets, giving him a look of normalcy in the bright Konoha afternoon. In his hand, he held a bag with 3 matching sets of clothing, a winter jacket, and some semi-formal wear for special occasions. How his young friend had been able to pay for all of it, Keisuke did not know. "Ah, don't worry about it, Ni-chan," Naruto said. "Old man Hokage gives me money every year for new clothes, but I haven't outgrown most of my stuff this year. You need it more than I do, anyway." Old man Hokage. So you don't live with your parents? "I don't have any parents to live with." Keisuke's eyebrows arched, showing his surprise. "I'm sorry. That must be tough." "Don't worry about it. I'm used to it, you know." Keisuke smiled. For a kid so small to be so independent and thoughtful, it was a true miracle to Keisuke's worried mind. "You're really something, Naruto-kun. Since I'd been gone from civilization such a long time, I was worried that the world might have become a bad place to live. But since I know that such strong kids like you still exist, I guess I was worried over nothing, eh?" Naruto was having a similar feeling about things. Not everyone, it seemed, was inclined to automatically ignore him or treat him like Pond S. "Glad I could help, Keisuke-ni-san. I'd better get to the academy and get chewed out by Iruka-sensei. If you're still around later, I'll show you Ichiraku, this awesome ramen bar. You'll love it. I'm looking forward to it, Naruto-kun. Until next time." Hyuga Hinata watched silently from the shadows as Naruto, the boy she admired, went about his youthful life. She tended to do this often during the brief periods after the academy let out and, on occasion, she was capable of losing track of time and earning a sharp rebuke from her father. It was a behavior that she had picked up not long after she had entered the academy, and though she knew that it wasn't quite a normal thing to do, she did not plan on stopping any time soon. After all, this wasn't just any boy that she was, for lack of a more sugar-coated word, stalking. Naruto was the shining example of everything that Hinata wasn't. As a member of the famed Hyuga clan, Hinata was expected to meet standards far above those of the average shinobi. However, thus far she had shown no more promise than anyone else among the academy classes, and even though she had been trained in her family's Juken Taijutsu style since she was 3 years old, her form was far from perfect. As a result, her father, along with many others of the main family, had begun to view her as a weak person. She knew this absolutely, it was plain as day in their eyes, and after going through this treatment for a few years she had started to believe it herself. Naruto, though, was something else entirely. The boy had borne the weight of those disgusted looks for as long as Hinata had known him, and yet it didn't stop him. It did not even slow him down. Where people expected so much from Hinata, they expected next to nothing from Naruto. In spite of this, Naruto would charge headlong into any challenge set before him, be it the mastery of a jutsu or simply his eternal quest for attention, and seek to overpower it with all his young might. Even when beaten, he never quit, but rose again to throw himself into his task until he either succeeded or collapsed from exhaustion. He was everything that Hinata wished she could be, and more. Therefore, no sooner had she known him, she had developed a feeling for him very like hero worship. The more she saw him, the stronger the admiration became. Today's Naruto stalking was little different from the other days. The academy let them go. Naruto hung around the shuriken practice area for a while before heading off to Ichiraku for lunch. However, today he'd managed to meet up with a tall stranger in rags, who he addressed as Keisuke-ni-chan. Both men's faces had lit up upon seeing each other, and Naruto didn't hesitate to drag him back into the ramen bar with him. Hinata's face flushed a little as she watched Naruto dig into his 7th bowl of pork ramen that afternoon. She admired his spirit, but she still wasn't quite used to witnessing this phenomenon yet. The stranger's face expressed little, but the smile on his face widened as he had his first helping. Ichiraku was not, after all, Naruto's only source of lunch because the food was bad. The stranger and Naruto exchanged a few words before parting, and as he walked off, Naruto had one of the biggest smiles on his face that Hinata had ever seen, bigger than the one she usually saw after he ate his ramen. Hinata's face grew slightly red at this. The last few times she had watched this, Naruto's smile seemed to bring a strange heat and lightheadedness to her, a feeling completely alien to her young mind. Disturbingly, she had no idea what it was. Naruto-kun, she breathed quietly, no other words managing to escape. Those 4 syllables seemed to express her whole world in these kinds of moments. You like him, don't you? asked a strange voice from behind her. Hinata jumped. It was the stranger that Naruto had been talking to. She had not seen or heard him approach at all. Before she could begin any other reaction, he spoke again. I felt your eyes on us when I sat down at the ramen bar. It's a bit rude to sit there and stare at people, you know, especially without telling them. I believe it's called stalking, actually. Hinata wasn't very good with speaking to strangers, and her reply was a broken, "GG Gamennas SI. Don't worry about it, girl, I could never stay mad at a cute kid like you," he said, ruffling Hinata's hair with one hand as he spoke. Just don't let me catch you doing that when I'm around again, or I'll turn you into someone with the authority to discipline you for it. I'm not one for stalking. His smile returned to his face as he asked again, so, you must like Naruto-kun quite a bit then, eh? Hinata was silent, but her redness had intensified somewhat at this. The man seemed to understand, though, he gave her a nod and reassured her, don't worry, I won't tell anyone if you don't want me to. That's a promise. Hinata let out the breath she'd been holding and responded with, arigatou gozaimasu. My name is Keisuke, by the way. I'm pleased to meet you, friend of Naruto-kun. Anno, I am Hyuga Hinata. Hyuga, eh? Keisuke frowned, for reasons the young Hyuga girl did not know. Yes, she said, then gasped as she remembered, oh, no. It's much later than I realized, I should have returned home an hour ago. Father will be angry. She turned and started toward her clan's property. Keisuke stopped her with a hand on her shoulder, and said, hey now, no need for you to suffer your father's wrath on my account. I'll walk home with you, and explain that I held you up. Besides, he said, his mouth set in a sudden determination, I should very much like to see how the Hyuga have fared in these times. Hinata was unsure how this Keisuke was connected to her family, but since he was kind enough to offer his protection against a scolding, she accepted. Keisuke's thoughts raced inside his head at a rate that made a flying shuriken seem like a slowly revolving carousel. Hyuga, that had been the name that Keisuke's own son had taken after fleeing the house on his 16th birthday. As he turned the name over and over in his head, he felt himself becoming anxious. This girl, her father, could they be? There was a way to find out. Keisuke's wife had told her about his son's gloriously pale and highly efficient eyes, and Keisuke himself had sensed that his aura was thicker towards the region that enveloped the front of his head. He tuned out his other senses, putting all of his attention on his sense of touch so that he could sense the subtle vibration of Hinata's aura. What Keisuke felt made him almost groan aloud. The girl had the same heaviness of aura in the front of her head. Though it was remotely possible that he was wrong, Keisuke was fairly sure now that Hyuga Hinata was, however distantly, related to his runaway son. The knowledge only made his anxiety 10 times worse. He could remember his jailer's last words to him, though they will strive for purity, their existence was cursed from the moment of your birth. They are, and ever will be, damned. It is my hope that you do not rot here. I would very much like to see your anguished face when you meet them again. Keisuke shook off the demoness's parting monologue, struggling to drag his nerves back to the surface. The sadistic bee was wrong, she had to be. Hyuga Hinata was far from damned, in his eyes. If she was typical of her family, then there should be nothing for him to worry about. These thoughts gave Keisuke confidence as his companion led him through what sounded like a large gate. At once, they were accosted by a man who Keisuke presumed was Hinata's father. Hinata, the man began, sternness evident in his deep voice, you are very late. I told you to return here immediately after the academy had finished with you. Did you forget? Hinata bowed her head in shame. Gee gamen. Pardon me, Hyuga-san, Keisuke interjected, but the fault is mine. I am a newcomer to this village, and lost my way. Hinata-chan was kind enough to show me where I might obtain food and lodging, though she needn't have bothered. I am sorry that I interfered with your plans. The man's aura did not change, but remained the stern, seemingly immovable force that it had been since it had appeared. Because you are a stranger, I forgive you. However, I must ask that you do not interfere again. Hinata's training must be the most important part of her life if she is to gain the strength that she needs to head the Hyuga clan. Now Keisuke felt something, a flash of something negative in Hinata's direction, disappointment. Already, she has fallen considerably behind schedule. At this, Keisuke's perception gave him glimpses of a reality that he had been loath to see. This Hyuga was more concerned with Hinata, his heir, rather than Hinata, his daughter. Already, a part of the demoness's prediction was beginning to seem like truth. Desperate to prove otherwise, Keisuke dared to probe a little. He steeled himself as he spoke again. I will honor your wishes, Hyuga. Hiashi. Hyuga Hiashi, he repeated. I'll not bother you a second time, unless I am invited. Keisuke secretly felt that the latter part of his vow was unnecessary. It seemed highly unlikely that Hiashi was the type to welcome visitors. But, if I may, I'll ask a question before I leave you. Hiashi did not react. Keisuke interpreted his silence as a lack of rejection rather than lack of permission, and continued. There is an impurity in your aura, and in the aura of your child, that is reminiscent of an acquaintance of mine. May I know who it was that founded your clan? To his dismay, Keisuke's ploy worked as intended. Hiashi's aura became tinged with surprise at the word, impurity, and was quickly replaced by an unmistakable seriousness. Hinata, he commanded, his severity perceptible in his voice, get inside. Hinata hastily obeyed. As soon as she passed out of range of Keisuke's hearing, Hiashi spoke again. What do you know of the Hyuga? You say that you are a stranger to Konoha. Are you a spy? An assassin? A diplomat? Speak, or I will arrest you and have you interrogated. Keisuke felt words left unspoken in the intensity of his aura. If you survive. Not wanting to take the chance, Keisuke opted to speak. I am not a diplomat, nor an assassin, nor a spy. I merely wish to know if you are a relative of my acquaintance, since you share the same impurity, and most likely the same power as a result of that impurity. Said impurity suddenly became much more noticeable in Hiashi's aura. Ah, Keisuke continued, so you do have it. The Byakugan is not an impurity. My ancestors purged themselves of impurity long before you or I was born. The power which you name impure is the sacred strength of the Hyuga clan, and we protect it with all of our considerable will and might. Keisuke scowled. This Hyuga Hiashi was proving quite difficult indeed, and the more he spoke, the more Keisuke began to see the demoness's manipulation in him. Insistently, Keisuke asked, but my acquaintance. There are no Hyuga living outside of Konoha that do not bear the caged bird curse seal. The seal makes the Byakugan impossible to detect in one's aura unless it is active. Your friend was likely carrying some kind of impurity, but he was not Hyuga. Keisuke wailed inwardly. A curse seal. How far will these Hyuga go to protect the sacred strength, which they obtained from demonic B? They are blind. He felt himself losing hope. Though they will strive for purity, they are, and ever will be, damned. Futilely, Keisuke asked, your founder. It is not your place to know. The Hyuga's voice had risen considerably, and Keisuke felt him drop into a ready stance. Who are you, to ask such questions? If you are not a spy, sent to glean the secrets of our power, or an assassin, intending to destroy it, then what are you? Keisuke struggled to keep his intense sadness in check. Lifting his head to face Hiashi, he removed his sunglasses, giving the Hyuga head a clear view of his eyeless face. I am, he said, voice heavy with grief, Keisuke of the grave. Hiashi's Byakugan deactivated with a snap and his aura become one of lesser shock, but Keisuke wasn't paying attention. He was already headed out of the Hyuga compound, towards the rapidly setting sun. As Keisuke was heading out of Konoha's walls the next morning, a loud, energetic, and blonde ninja in training caught up to him. A look of sadness was on the boy's face. Keisuke Ni-chan, you're leaving already. Keisuke sighed. Yeah, Naruto-kun, I'm leaving. But you just got here. Naruto pouted, upset at seeing one of the first friends he ever made confirm that he was heading out. Why do you have to go now? Naruto-kun, Keisuke began, pausing to think of what words might work. I came to Konohagakure hoping that I would be able to meet some very old friends of mine. However, when I saw them, they were completely unlike what I had hoped they would be. They hated me utterly. If I try to stay here, we won't get along, and we may cause a lot of trouble for the village. I don't want to be the cause of everyone's problems. But, Ni-chan, if they hate you so much, why don't you try to prove that you aren't worth hating? Why don't you try to become something that they can like? A sad smile came to Keisuke's lips. Naruto seemed to understand his kind of pain. Because, Naruto-kun, for me to do that might get a lot of people killed. Do you want me to be AM? Of course not, Ni-chan. But you shouldn't have to run away from it. It's either run or be a problem to Konoha, for me, and my conscience won't let me live down the second option, Keisuke returned, gently. Besides, I don't really need to prove that they're stuck-up bastards. I have a big, strong guy like you to stay here and do it for me, Naruto-kun. Me, Ni-chan. Yes, I know you'll be one of the best ninja to ever live one day. Your heart's in the right place and you have the kind of spirit that demands respect. I have every confidence that you will prove to be stronger than almost anyone else, not just physically, but morally as well. Naruto just whined some more. But, Keisuke Ni-chan. Nothing you can say will make me remain here. Naruto, I want you to forget about me and throw everything you have into becoming stronger, for your sake and for mine. These words seemed to reach Naruto. This was the kind of thing that he could put his spirit into, even though he was sad to see his new friend leave. Okay, Ni-chan. The next time you see me, I'll be twice the ninja that your bastard friends are. I'll be disappointed if you aren't, Keisuke said, his genuine smile returning. Naruto turned and ran back toward his favorite training ground. Keisuke felt a presence tense up in the nearby shadows, apparently torn between staying where it was and following the blonde boy. Keisuke's smile widened. One Hyuga, at least, had some morality left. He called out to the shadows, go ahead and follow him, Hinata-chan. You'll learn a more valuable lesson from him than you ever will from your father. There was a pause, and then the presence moved off after Naruto. Satisfied, Keisuke of the Grave departed from Konoha to seek a new existence in this age, and to, if luck permitted it, take his vengeance upon the monstrosity that had cursed his line. Greater than 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 end prologue greater than greater than greater than greater than greater than greater than. Uzumaki Naruto heaved a sigh of exasperation as he sank into the scalding water. His body wasn't complaining, it had been worked, beaten, and tapped almost to the point of tearing itself apart, and was more than glad to let the hot spring burn its pains away. Naruto's mind, however, was not comforted. Jiraiya, his pro-tem sensei, was really getting on his nerves. Not only did the sorry, perverted excuse for a legendary ninja force him to practically obliterate himself on a daily basis with his training, he never bothered to do anything for his exhausted disciple when the session was done. In his off hours, when Naruto was either passed out from fatigue or otherwise incapacitated, he would run off to whatever passed for a bathhouse in the vicinity to do what he called research for his infamous Ica Ica series. It made Naruto feel like some kind of rag doll, being tossed around, ripped up, and then neglected by some sadistic, badly parented kid. At the same time, though, he knew that he shouldn't argue over it. After all, since he'd left Konoha on this horrendous journey, his performance had been increasing at a rate which he hadn't dreamed possible in all his 14 years of life. Being trained by the world's most powerful perverted author may not have been fun in the slightest, but it most certainly did not make you weak. Naruto had already managed to master several explosive new ninjutsu techniques, shored up numerous holes in his taijutsu form, and perfected a few new inventive tricks involving his cage bunshin technique. His body, after taking brutal daily beatings for almost a year and a half, was many times tougher than it had been when this had begun. He still couldn't pull off anything other than the most basic genjutsu to save his life, but he was now capable of recognizing and, in many cases, breaking intermediate and upper level illusions. He was more powerful than he had ever been, and he was getting better every day. Even so, there was no way that anyone could expect Naruto to go through this kind of treatment and not be pissed off. Damn that bastard Ero Sennin, he thought for the 100th time that day. He grumbled as he rose from the spring, knowing that said perverted hermit was at that very moment conducting his research at one of the many female-only hot spring baths in this town. Most likely, he would not see hide nor hair of Jiraiya for several hours at the very least. He decided to use the time frugally, and, after addressing, headed into the nearest ramen stall to give his muscles something to repair themselves with. Ah! Exclaimed a very satisfied Naruto, food befitting the next Hokage. Ramen never fails to juice me up after a long week. Of course, it had taken about 20 bowls of various flavors to do it, but the ramen cook wasn't about to discourage him. This was some of the best business he'd ever had. Whoever runs the ramen shop where this kid lives must be the richest man alive, he thought. At a certain ramen bar in Konoha, Ichiraku Tsuki sneezed. Now that the demands of his body had been met, Naruto turned his attention inward, toward nostalgic daydreams of home and wondering what unbelievably complicated and awesome jutsu he would be learning next. And how Jiraiya was going to run him ragged as he learned it. Even as he fought to keep from yelling, "Damn you to hell, Ero Sennin," he could picture his sensei's red, drooling face as he entertained yet another pair of floozies. Hell, I can even hear them, he thought aloud. Yet, as the image of his perverted sensei faded from his head, the flirtatious giggling that he'd thought he'd heard did not go away. In fact, it was getting louder. Oh, great, he thought as he realized the truth, they're real. He swiveled in his seat to face the source of the noise, ready to yell numerous obscenities at Jiraiya, though he knew it would only get him increasingly painful training later. Yet when his eyes found the women, it was not Jiraiya that was between them. Instead, he saw a tall man bedecked in black and green, wearing sunglasses even though he was indoors, escort him to the counter and order 2 bowls of miso-flavored ramen, as well as 1 extra large bowl of what he called that super stamina stuff. Naruto stared. Something about this man stirred something in him. The stranger was attired as a shinobi might be, with a many-pocketed vest, plated gloves, and the usual open-toed boots, yet Naruto could not see a headband anywhere on him. This guy, could he be a missing nin? However, Naruto's confused stare became an annoyed one when one of the women chirped, "Oh, the super stamina stuff, Kei-chan. Planning some real fun tonight, aren't we?" Both she and her friend had a look on their faces that Naruto knew all too well, and it was making him mad. Grr, this guy is no different from Ero Sennin. Well, if I have anything to say about it, he's not going to be having much fun tonight. He opened his mouth, preparing to rip the sunglasses freak a new one. And was interrupted before he began as the man, without so much as turning a hair in his direction, said, "What are you staring at, kid?" For about 2 seconds, the kid's mouth just hung open, and Keisuke wondered if he'd actually managed to shock him speechless. Unfortunately, he hadn't, and as soon as he'd gotten over being interrupted, the kid was in his face, yelling so everyone and the grandma could hear. "Who do you think I'm staring at? Not like it's hard to notice you or anything, with all the open pervertedness you're radiating." Keisuke tried to counter, but the blonde midget's trap hadn't quite shut yet. Though he was already more annoyed than he had been for a while, he mustered his patience and waited for the storm of accusations to blow itself out. He didn't have to wait long, though, because not long after the kid started, he was halted by AS to the face, courtesy of Keisuke's lovely escort. "Who do you think you are, brat?" She berated him. "You barely know him and yet you fling all this in his face. Kei-chan isn't the kind of guy who would go to the bathhouse for a peep show." The brat rubbed his face, where a rather nice palm print had manifested, and returned fire. "Trust me, Nei-chan, I know this kind of guy wherever I am, and you are definitely being used. I am not your sister, dunce, and Kei-chan is definitely not what you think he is. He can't take peeks because he can't. Keisuke, see her off here. That's enough, Konoka-san. You and Sayuri-san can go home now. I'll handle the little guy." She complied, though her angry glare didn't leave the kid's face until they were both outside, where she audibly groused to her friend, "Stupid brat, ruined our fun." Before she passed out of earshot. The instant they were gone, Keisuke rose and walked over to the boy, pausing to size up his aura before speaking. The kid was angry, obviously, but what he was looking for were the subtle vibrations that would signal spiking chakra and a high level of fighting power. He found them, but they were unfocused and few. The kid was mad, but not mad enough to Keisuke felt no danger. Frowning, he said, "I'm sorry that Konoka-san did that. That mark on your face looks quite painful." "It is. Thanks a lot, freak," came the growling reply. "Even so, I'm really offended by your unprovoked attempt to degrade me." Hello. Your behavior back there was pretty provocative." Keisuke found himself getting more annoyed by the minute. What the heck was with this kid? Sure, he and his friends could be dirty-minded at times, but surely that isn't anything to lose one's temper over. Though he was ticked off himself, Keisuke contained it. Maybe the little guy was just having a bad day. I'll grant that Sayuri-san was hinting at something less than sanitary. But I can't see what it has to do with you. What's your beef with me, kid? Stop trying to act cool. I hate jerks like you, acting like you own the world and getting all the attention, then abusing that attention for your own dirty agendas. That's my beef with you. All that attention you're getting, you don't deserve any of it. And I suppose that you think you're better qualified. Hell yeah. Anyone is more qualified than you. You ain't so cool. At this point, Keisuke was about ready to blow the ignorant little punk through the roof. However, his common sense got the better of him again, so he was forced to consider alternative action. Fortunately, an idea came to mind that he thought might do the trick. Okay, kid, how about we do this? Naruto grinned diabolically as he approached the nearest bathhouse. His confidence was practically visible. He knew that he was going to show that freak, and it was going to be a walk in the park. And he thought that the sunglasses freak would give him a challenge. Go to a bathhouse, any bathhouse at all in this town, and see how many looks of adoration you get. Come back without another palm print on your face, and I'll acknowledge that you're not just a brat. Come back with an adoring fan, and I'll acknowledge defeat and let you think whatever you want of me. If you survive, that is. Hey, you've made the grave mistake of underestimating me, sunglasses freak. Naruto formed a hand seal, preparing the jutsu that would win him the battle in one fell swoop. Geez, all that just because Sayuri-san cracked the stamina joke again? People must be pretty stiff where that kid lives. Keisuke had a rather smug smile on his face as he made his way back to his apartment. He'd expected the little prick to lose hope at the impossibility of the task, or maybe to insist that nobody could do that and demand something easier. However, the block-headed kid accepted the challenge without a moment's hesitation. While he knew that the kid would fail, he couldn't help but admire the persistent spirit that he had. Little did he know that in mere moments, that small admiration would be horribly overpowered. As he rounded the last corner, he heard a distinctly feminine voice call out to him. Oi, sunglasses freak, what do you think of me now? Keisuke turned and edged his ear towards the voice, feeling for the person's aura. He was surprised to find that though the voice was female, it belonged to the same brat that had patronized him in the ramen shop. His aura was the same, but the kid had apparently transformed himself into a woman. He thought, why transform into a woman if you're going to attract? That's when Keisuke perceived the other auras, the ones massed behind the kid. 56 of them. All male. You moron. He yelled, what's up with you? You were supposed to bring back women. The kid grinned wider. In his sickeningly girly voice, he said, doesn't matter. You said, come back with an adoring fan, and I'll acknowledge defeat. I brought back plenty more than one. You have to give up now. Cancel the illusion and see how adoring they are when they find out you're a man. At these words, the crowd following the kid reeled in confusion, then disgust, then homophobia. In moments, every single one of them had turned and fled back to their homes, not even bothering to return to the bathhouse for their things. As far as they were concerned, it was no longer safe nor sanitary in that particular hot spring. Meanwhile, the kid, whose defeat had just been snatched from the jaws of victory, had cancelled his transformation and now sat on the ground, cursing. Keisuke then did something that he hadn't done in a while. He laughed, and hard. The kid, naturally, didn't take kindly to this. What the heck is so funny? When he'd managed to get up enough breath to speak normally, Keisuke responded, kid, as stupid as you are, if you'd watched those men react that way towards me, you'd just about piss yourself, too. Indeed, rang a voice that Keisuke did not know. Watching this exchange was extremely entertaining. Perhaps I can convince Orochimaru-sama to keep Naruto-kun alive as a comic relief. The voice was definitely malicious, and when Keisuke found its aura, and the auras of its two accomplices, he found K intent to match it. We have no quarrel with you, it continued, speaking to Keisuke alone this time, but if you choose to come between us and our target, my subordinates and I will K you without remorse or hesitation. Keisuke's percipience let him detect the flare of surprise and then hatred as the kid recognized who it was that possessed the voice. You're Orochimaru's wasi errand boy. You're Kabuto. Why, Naruto-kun, I'm pleased to see that you remembered, said the malevolent one, Kabuto. I'd give you greetings from Sasuke-kun, but I'd just be giving you false hope. He seems to have only enough room in his thoughts for Orochimaru-sama and his brother. Keisuke could feel the kid's chakra burning now. To his horror, it was nothing at all like the force that he had seen him muster at the ramen stall. This time, the kid was not only willing to K, but it seemed almost like he was capable of ripping up half the village to do it. Something really big is going on here. If the villagers get involved, it could end up being AM. I should try to defuse this as quickly as possible. Raising his voice over the kid's low growls, Keisuke spoke. Oi, Kabuto-san. Your target is the kid, Naruto, right? It looks to me like this could be a pretty destructive conflict. Are you sure you want to do this here, where innocent bystanders could get K? The malicious edge in Kabuto's aura did not dissipate. Orochimaru-sama wants Naruto-kun either captured or K as soon as it may be done. Any hesitation on our part could lead to his enemy, Akatsuki, catching him first and extracting the demon, Kyubi, from him for their own use. This is the most opportune time for us to act, while Jiraiya is occupied, and we will withhold nothing. To punctuate his words, Kabuto flung a series of knives at the kid, Naruto, who managed to dodge them easily, but whose trajectory carried him into the grasp of a third henchman, who'd hidden himself in the shadow of a nearby alley. Keisuke made to rush for the captured boy, but he needn't have bothered. Naruto unleashed a surge of chakra that flung his captor away. Unfortunately, this burst of raw power also left a rather large crater in the street. Keisuke felt an urgent need to intervene. If this was allowed to continue, civilian deaths would become a certainty. He began to feed chakra outside his body, extending his percipience, and positioning his power for use. He wished he'd obtained the abilities that he had long ago, when it could have served his personal agenda. Unfortunately, he had only recently perfected them and it was useless in that particular cause now. But he'd be damned if he didn't use them to protect this village, and this funny, loudmouthed kid. Before he could move, though, Naruto had stopped for a moment to reconcentrate his power after his burst, and Kabuto had rushed him in that interval. Orochimaru's servant moved with incredible speed and precision, striking several points in his peripheral nervous system. Keisuke sensed a sort of inversion in the boy's aura, and as he observed, Naruto began to thrash rather wildly, his movements illogical and jerky. Don't bother moving anymore, Naruto-kun, said Kabuto, you'll only hurt yourself. I used a trick that I borrowed from Tsunade. Your movements will be the opposite of the movements that you intend to make. For example, if you wanted to move your left arm forward, your right leg would be what responds. It's a very disconcerting technique, isn't it? A couple of Kabuto's underlings laughed lightly at this, while others moved in to bind Naruto's arms and legs, and affix what Keisuke thought might be a paper seal to his abdomen. As soon as it touched, Naruto thrashed and gave a painful scream. That seal absorbs chakra that you generate and focuses it back upon you in the form of an electrical current. If you want to have a relatively comfortable journey, we advise that you keep calm. Kabuto turned to Keisuke now. I'd like to thank you for not interfering. You'll be glad to know that with Naruto-kun gone, there will be no further danger to this village. With that, the group leaped to the rooftops and headed out towards the forest to the east of the village. Keisuke waited until they had cleared the village walls, and then got busy. He wrapped 3 arms of his extended chakra around himself, digging into his skin. It itched as it sank in, but Keisuke was used to it. When it was finished, he felt the elaborate pattern that the chakra had carved into his skin, felt the power that it gave him. He was able now, he would catch them before they got far. 64 Ghostly Arms, Chosoku no Kokuen. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.